Welcome to the Total Acre Podcast. I'm your host, C.R. Siebold. This podcast is all about helping growers unlock their potential. We aim to bring listeners agronomic insights, valuable educational interviews, real-world strategies that optimize yield and maximize ROI. This show is going to explore innovative practices, creative strategies, and breakthrough products with people that are shaping the industry, all through engaging and inspiring stories. Who better to learn from than the legendary world champion David Hula, Randy Dowdy, and Alex Harrell? Because in farming and in life, iron always sharpens iron. And the best way to grow or get better is to continually be learning, networking with peers, have access to industry leaders, and the tools, tips, and tricks, and overall quality of information. Knowledge is power. Tune in, hit play. Let's unlock your farm's potential together. Hey y'all, Chad Siebold here with Total Acre Podcast. I'm excited to have a guest that maybe looks familiar, got a great looking haircut, right? We are not brothers, even though we kind of look similar. Ryan Thompson with AGI. Glad to have you today. Thanks for coming on, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me on here. Always good to get connected with you, Chad.
Yeah, man. Listen, up north, I know you're having some interesting weather like everybody else across the country, right? A little wet here, a little wet there. I think everybody's planted up in the Dakotas, right?
Yeah, we, kind of the advantage of starting out in a D2 drought monitor. Planting went really well, really fast. Not many idle acres got left to the side. So planting, I think, probably went in close to record pace up here. And then thankfully we started getting some rains coming through. Some are getting more than others, but I think almost everybody's had a shot of rain. I know my crops, I was surprised how much moisture was in the ground when we got it planted, and then been thankful to get 3-4 inches since it got planted there in May. So feeling good right now. We just gotta keep letting Mother Nature do her thing, and hopefully she doesn't disappoint. So.
That's right. Listen, what's David always say? You got to have a couple things, but one of them is God on your side, right? So
That's right. Yeah.
Thank goodness for those. And our guys in Ohio that have planted now for the second or third time, prayers for you guys. Hope we can get that crop in, but always a challenge, right? In our industry for sure. But I'm excited to talk about. That's right. I'm excited to talk a little bit about some of the technology you guys are looking at. But really, before I get into that, you work with AGI. That's Ag Growth International. For those that maybe haven't heard of that, you guys own a lot of different companies. You're in a lot of different areas. But really specifically, I want to talk about today is bin manager, the bin side of the business, which is AGI, bin manager.
Yes, bin manager. It's kind of the premier bin monitoring technology out there. It's a fully automated system that allows growers to take some of the guesswork out of all that grain that we work so hard to produce, and we put it in the bin. Having a fully automated system like Bin Manager takes a lot of guesswork out. It's always monitoring both the temperature and the moisture of the grain that's in the bins, and depending on the settings that you have your bin set to, it's telling the fans when to turn on and when to turn off. So not only are you keeping full track of the grain that's in the bin, that the fans are only running when the air is conducive to helping you accomplish your goal inside that bin. And a thing that a lot of folks kind of forget about is when those fans are only running when they need to, we're reducing your energy costs. I think we figured 30% reduction there. So.
Before you get too deep into the product, I got to tell you, right? Like, think of the evolution of grain bins, right? It used to be, look at all the bins that are out across the countryside. They're little 3,000 to 5,000 bushel bins. It used to be what you could produce, right? I mean, that's when you would buy. Now the 10,000 bushel bins. Now everybody's making those into the gazebos, right? The little hunt gazebos next to their pool. And, so if that's not a 30 to 50,000 bushel bin, guys are just kind of abandoning them. But there is technology that can, for the guys that are using the smaller bins right here, right? Like there are some opportunities there, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. But let's talk about the evolution of some of the technology, right? You and I are both long in the tooth enough that we know we were there when you remember the light bars and auto steer and auto track, and everybody's like, you know what? I drive the straightest roads in the county. Stay away from me, right? And now look at the evolution. Everybody has some form of auto steer.
Oh, yeah. And to speak to our age, I mean, really, we got into ag at I feel, a great time, because that's really when all this technology first started off. I mean, I went to school for agronomy, and just to watch, not just on the seed side with the technology, but all this stuff that's come on farm, and not just how I mean, it really was just adapted very quickly. I think all of us, it doesn't matter if you're a South Dakota farmer, Nebraska, Ohio, Tennessee, whatever, you have challenges on the farm and you utilize technology to minimize those challenges or get the most efficiency out of it. And I think this is really that last part of the equation for most farms is, we utilize all that technology to grow that crop as efficiently as we can. But then at the end of the day, most of us go back and we put that grain in the bin the same way our grandpas did. And even though we have a lot of growers that are very good at managing grain in the bin as it is today, this is just one more piece that allows you to improve that efficiency or allow some technology into the farm for you to be able to manage that much more effectively and maybe identify some more markets that you can go attack because you know what's going on inside your bin.
I like to think of it as optionality, right? It used to be, right, like you could get some of that technology on a tractor, right, or a piece of equipment or a truck, right? Look at power windows, right? I remember still having the old, right, when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But those options, are now becoming standard, right? And I think some of that is a testament to what you guys have done, has created that standardization. There's a lot of different tools out there, and we can talk about what makes your tools unique. But I think that standardized kind of tool that's in the toolkit now is conditioning. How do we, we spend all that time, money, effort to be able to grow that crop, like David and Randy always talk about, right? Like we have all the tools in the toolkit to grow a crop, and then we hit these numbers that are astronomical, but then we put them in a bin and we just say, okay, I guess we'll wait for a good price. There's more to that, Ryan, than that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially like you think about soybeans, for example. How many guys store, most of the storage goes to corn, but we have guys that store soybeans as well. And last year was a prime example, but I mean, it happens every year. We start harvesting soybeans maybe at 15, 14%. Our target's to take them to market at 13, but before we know it, they're 10, 9, even 8%. I mean, I've heard of some 7% beans going in the bin this year, right? So again, one more way that technology can help you is like, those grain bins, whether it's something you built 20 years ago or something you're building this year, that's an investment. And I look at it as just another tool on the farm, and you can make that tool more useful. You can make it a revenue generator by utilizing technology. For like soybeans, for example, our system is fully capable to utilize the humidity in the air. And again, running your fans with the purpose, take some of that humidity from outside, safely put it into that bin and rehydrate those soybeans. So I don't care if you're adding 1% more moisture or 3%, whatever it is, you start generating dollars, because at the end of the day, if you can utilize your bin and rehydrate those beans properly, you are now generating more income, because you're essentially going to be able to haul more beans out of that bin than what you put in it when you were harvesting it. So.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, and I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it. But I think David's been using Bin Manager for a few different years, handful, probably almost 5 years, 4 or 5 years. I know you had some stuff out there on him. When Brian and I went out, I think we were at one of the events in Ohio, and we were talking to some guys about rehydrating beans, and that's exactly, his brother farms out there in north central Ohio, and that's exactly what we talked about. Was we were pulling beans out at, I think, 9%, shattering at the head, but every bean we could get in the grain bin, we were excited about. But then, those are real dollars, right? So if you're leaving them, if you're harvesting them, Mother Nature does take its toll on us, right? If we can't get them out and the reel's shattering at the head and you're leaving them on the ground, that's tough, right? Guys with the draper heads, congratulations, right? Yeah. If you don't have that and you're pulling them in, you're putting them in that bin, those are real dollars, between 7, 10, 11% to get that extra point for sure.
Oh, yeah. And I think you had a good point there. I mean, talking about shattering, I mean, think about how many growers now have air reels on the bean head, right? The whole point of that is to get more beans in the head to go into the tank, to go into the bin, right? So this is one more, just another example of utilizing available technology. I made an investment on that air reel or whatever, maybe it's a draper head, whatever it is, but you made an investment on something to capture more crop out of the field. Now that we have it captured, let's see if we can bump that up a little bit more by utilizing technology to do something like that.
Well, Ryan, you know kind of what Total Acre is about is access to information, right? Maximizing
Mhm.
ROA. You know, a lot of the different things that our members are using for tools. Again, these are things guys are paying for. Nobody's giving them to us. You know, I'm not out there using stuff because I'm an endorsed. You know, I've been endorsed by AGI on some of the products and tools.
Mhm.
It's tools that work, and then if they're working on your farm, it really comes down to, you know, you've seen that big red easy button, right? How easy
Yeah.
can you make it to condition? Are the controls user friendly? You know, the alerts. I don't want to be, you know, like my Ring doorbell that goes off every 2 seconds, right? I don't
Yeah.
have one, but everybody that's walking around at the baseball game and you hear everybody's Ring doorbell, right?
Yeah.
You've seen that,
Yeah.
I'm sure. But you know, like how easy do you make that, right? Without getting into the specifics of that tool, it's got to be easy to use.
Oh yeah, and our platform is very easy. I mean the hardware is out at the bin, obviously, but the other part of the equation of Bin Manager is the software, and we have our app, our site where everybody can go view their account, and you can see every one of the bins that you put a Bin Manager system into all in one platform at one time. You can see it in a 3D model, which I compare a lot to a yield monitor map. You're going to see some yellows, reds, and greens, and
Hmm.
then you can also look at it from a chart perspective, almost like a Excel spreadsheet to see what's going on there. But you have a full view of all your bins, and then you can click on each bin individually, and each bin individually you are able to adjust the settings on that to what you want it to be. So we really have four different settings within the bin manager platform. One's auto dry and cool. A lot of folks use that for their corn. The other one is auto hydrate, that pretty much everybody uses for their soybeans. But then if you're a small grain farmer, we got one that's auto cool. Some folks use it on beans and corn as well. But when we're typically harvesting our small grains, it's at a pretty high temperature time of year. So one of the first steps they do is set it to auto cool, get those temperatures down as quickly as possible. And then for our northern farmers, especially, we have one called auto rewarm, and that's for up north. A lot of times we end up freezing that grain, and so
Hmm.
once we recommend that they don't start utilizing that until we have about a week's worth of weather where the low temperatures are going to be below freezing. But auto rewarm allows the system to know to select the right air to put in that bin, gently rewarm that grain to eliminate a lot of condensation that'll happen at the top of the bin that causes crusting and mold and things like that. So yeah, you select whatever setting is pertinent to what you're trying to accomplish with the crop in the bin, and then you can adjust your settings. If you think that whole bin went in at about 18% for corn and you want to get it down to 15, that's what you set it to. Set your desired grain temperature that you want to go with and hit save. The system does the rest from there. And if there's something that
Well,
looks out of whack along the way, it's designed to send you a text alert saying, hey, we have a hotspot alert, or the fans show they should be running and they're not. Things like that happen all the time. And, they're getting constant communication, not only from the platform, but also our customer support team as well, that are monitoring all our customers' accounts as well. So,
I love it, and I can visually get that, but I know you'll see some stuff on the screen here. But if you look at again that red, yellow, green, you've got that visual that you're going to see the challenging spots, right? You
yeah.
got three or four of these bins that are out there right now for the bin manager software. So Ryan, that's cool. I really like that. If you look at a guy that is conditioning from 18, let's say he's pulling out he 20,
Yeah.
18, 19, 20%, when it gets down to that 15, 16. What about the guys that maybe don't have the ability to do some of the things you're talking about? Maybe there's no dryer set up, right? But the guys that are just pulling it out of the field, 17%, 18%, and then just
Mhm.
turning a fan and leaving the fan on until December 15th, right?
Yeah.
There's a better way of doing things. And I think and again, you don't have to tell us what exactly the products are, but there is a affordable way to be able to get almost like a dip your toe in the water kind of solution, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have dialed down versions of Bin Manager where it can, you can just look at it from a point of view of just wanting to see what the temps and moistures are. It may not be fully automated, but a lot of times folks just after they kind of compare the two, they just automatically go back to the full blown Bin Manager for that automation peace of mind, so they know, because again, we're doing how many things on a daily basis on the farm, and
Sure.
I don't care how good a guy does at managing his bins. There's always something that pops up, and thinks, man, I was going to turn the fans on 2 hours ago and I haven't done it. So we lost some time there. So, I mean, it's one of those things where the automation side, again, utilize technology to your advantage, have something in place that's just doing it for you.
Yeah, and I kind of go back to some of the tech that's in irrigation, right? So for my irrigators that
Mm-hmm.
are out there, and if you're not an irrigator, sorry, but at the end of the day, if you've got, some of the different automations that you can turn off and off pivots, like think of the efficiency gain in that, not just, the alerts and all the other things that go with that, but then now all of a sudden, if something happens, you've got all the electricity right there, right? And that
No.
system is going to be reliable enough to give you those alerts. And you talked a little bit about the controls being able to alert you if there are issues. And again, making that easy, I think it's one of those things where, it's kind of too good to be true until you try it. So if
Yeah.
guys are looking to put a system on, where do you start?
Really, it starts with what we call a on-farm assessment or on-site assessment. And, we really encourage all of our growers to request that. I mean, it's not something that's mandatory, but I really encourage everybody, if you're thinking about whether it's Bin Manager or one of the other companies that are out there, have them come out and take a look at your bins and actually meet you where you're at with what you have. Because what we typically find, and this isn't, again, not like a fault of the grower, it's just how things go. There's different reasons why you may not have full capability of doing what you think it can do based on what is there for the bin, right? So, for example, if I have a 48-foot diameter, 10 wide bin, but I got a 10 horse fan on it, that's not going to be as effective as, say, a 36 6 wide, right? Because again,
Right.
flow, you need to identify what do you have for CFM. That's your
Sure.
air flow measure within the bin. And so that's usually where we start, because we want to look at the bin. We want to identify, okay, what does it actually have for fans and vents? That's another thing that thankfully today we usually don't have to worry about not enough vents on the bin, but we have run into cases where, yeah, I want to buy this system, and we identify, this system can do some major benefit for you, but you don't have enough vents on the roof. And, if you don't have the
Yeah.
proper number of vents, now you've got a mushroomed roof or a damaged roof that's going to cost you more money too. So we try to make the on-site assessment not so much a sales process, but an educational process. Because really, at the
And
end of the day, you have three different types of bin. You got a drying bin, or what I call a conditioning bin, that has like 1 CFM or better. Then you have a dry aeration bin, which is probably around a half a CFM. And then you have just an aeration bin, which is like zero 0.1 to zero 0.2 CFM. So, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of times we get on farm and we're identifying that the farmer has zero 0.5 to zero 0.2 CFM. And, again, you look at some of this technology, is it something that I need? Well, maybe not need, but you can get a lot more effective and more efficient once you know what you have, utilize technology, and start using that to your advantage. Because, there's times where you're like, man, you've been hitting 20% corn in this bin with only 0.2 CFM. Come on, you've had to have an issue or something in
you
the past.
almost can predict that. Yeah. Yeah. You can almost predict that they've.
Yeah, but then it becomes a more honest conversation. Like, yeah, well, I have had a year or two where we pull a hotspot out, or there's some crusting going on. It's like, okay, so this is how, if we identify what you actually have, now we can help you learn. We'll run our aeration models to identify what you have for CFM. And if we identify they don't have enough, okay, let's play with that model. Right now you have 10 horse. How will that CFM change if we swap that single 10 for a single 20? Or if you're on single phase and you can't bump up to a 20, what happens if we add a second 10 horse, or, whatever the case may be? We can play with that to help them get to where they want to be and provide the solutions to get there.
So you usually within Total Acre, we always talk about a product or something that's going to return on that investment in terms of how do we make sure the products worked, and then now we got bushels, right? So we're always taking it back to yield.
Yeah.
Now I want to go back to what you just said, right? You got an on-site bin assessment that says, hey, yield's now in the bin. I'm not even going to get into phantom yield loss, right? Some of the things there, but you talk about the losses now that you're assuming we have a certain dollar amount in bin based off of local commodity price or delivery dates, all these things from a marketing standpoint. These are real dollars. It all is in terms of ROI and maximizing how we pulled it out of the field. Now, how do we take it to market, right?
Correct.
I think every farmer kind of realizes they set it and forget it, right? I think if you were to throw a percentage out there, right, just a little fun fact, it's going to be a Ryan fact is what I'm going to call it. What do you think percentage of the bins out there today? I'll put you on the spot. What do you think guys that are monitoring their bins today effectively? Maybe they have a bin manager out, they just don't use it, right? How many guys that are out there, right, that have bins that don't have anything today? What do you think percentage of coverage is?
With a monitoring system?
Let's just say nothing on it today, no technology.
Oh, nothing on it? Oh, you're probably in that 90 to 85% range. I mean, because
I was going to guess like 75, 90%. Wow.
Well, and again, this is a Ryan number, not an AGI number, but I look at it from the standpoint. Again, AGI is very proud and thankful. We are essentially the market share leader in bin monitoring technology in the U.S., and I believe we have close to 5 to 7%. So even if you combine that with our competitors that are out there, it is a very small percentage. If you look at the USDA numbers of what they show for bins on farm, I mean, there's a lot, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And let's just say 15 to 20% of those bins can't essentially have a bin manager on them because they don't have an aeration floor, or they don't have food. We run into that too. There's parts of the country where they're out in the middle of nowhere, there's no electricity. So but on the average, I mean, I'd say at least 85% of growers, or at least bins today, do not have a bin monitoring system on them.
That's going to stick to the tape, but I believe it to be that high too, right? Like, again, it's a rough number, guys, but now my correlation go back to where we started this conversation, right? Talking technology with auto steer. How many people have a tractor today that they're using actively that does not have auto steer, right? Or some of that technology around them. I mean, so I think the evolution of that is we're in the first maybe 5 to 7 years of guys saying, aha, right? Yeah. I think you guys are in a great position to be able to take advantage of folks that are looking for opportunity to be able to actually max ROI on what's in the bin.
Yeah. And I think that's a great analogy because, I mean, when auto steer first come out, I mean, there was a lot of pushback on that. I was like, who needs that? I can drive straight. And then next thing you know, there aren't too many tractors getting sold today that don't have it. And again, it kind of comes back to the principle. It's like, is a bin monitoring system necessarily a need is the farm going to go bankrupt if you don't use it? Probably not. Same way with the auto steer, right? Every farmer on this call doesn't need a auto steer system, but they've identified there are efficiencies there, whether it's just the reduction of stress on them as they're going through the field for 12 hours a day or more, or just the efficiency part of it, that we're not burning fuel and reworking a piece of ground that we already hit, 2 to 3 foot of it with that field cultivator or whatever they're doing. There's a point it's on there. And I think as growers start opening their minds and thinking about their operations, that's where a bin manager falls into play too. It's something that's just going to make things more efficient, and it's going to make your marketing more effective because you are better able to hit those targets that you're looking for.
And I think, I just want to talk, I mean, the sensitivity is the price of commodities, right? But the guys that are in a position here to be able to say, hey, I'm going to spend money on something that's going to give me a 5 to 7 bushel lift, whether it's I don't want to bring any products into it, but in a production side, right? Yeah. What we don't see is the 5 to 7 bushel loss or the losses that incur in those bins over time. And again, this is an annual thing. I would assume that there's probably some sort of write-up on your website if you guys want to really check out the FAQs on what the numbers all have ran. But I would imagine it's probably staggering to see the amounts of losses in bin once it's in there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I mean, if that slide deck I sent you, I think it's slide 14, there's a nice little draw up on just soybeans, for example, being able to rehydrate your soybeans. And, I think it's using an example of a 50,000 bushel bin. For every 1% of moisture you can add back into that bin, that's essentially about 655 bushels. If you can actually put in 3 points of moisture, you're just shy of 2,000. Yeah. The reason I kind of reference that is to your point on the pricing side. We in that slide I have some comparisons of like 9.50 cash beans, $12 beans, and $14 beans. And at 9.50, that roughly came out to just shy of $19,000. At $14 beans, now you're talking almost $28,000. So I mean, end of the day, it doesn't matter what the price is or the price environment is. It has the ability to put more money back in your pocket. And the way I look at it, I farm, a piddly 250 acres, but with the way prices are now, I think we're all in the same boat. I have less wiggle room to make a mistake this year at 9.50 beans than I did a couple of years ago when I was taking $14 beans to the market.
Oh, 100%.
So that 1 to 3% that I can put back in my bean bin right now is almost more important to me than when I had $14 beans. And conversely, the same thing is true of corn. You talk about phantom bin loss. That's one of those things too that, I mean, I worked as a grain buyer for a while, and I always heard phantom bin loss from my grain customers, and didn't really think about it till I got on this side of the business. But yeah, again, that is probably one of the bigger advantages outside just making sure that corn's staying safe in the bin is we're minimizing the amount of over-dried corn. That essentially is your phantom bin loss.
Sure.
I mean, how many times I heard a guy say, well, I put 50,000 in this bin and I'm only hauling out 45. Well, that's because we turned our fans on. We just let them run for whether it was 2, 4, 6 weeks, whatever the guy's prerogative was. And we over-dried the bottom portion of that bin. So again, when you are running the fans when they need to run, or when the air conditions are right, you minimize that amount of over-dried grain.
Just fully optimizing your conditioning, your environment, based on your environment. I love it. And for the more simple-minded guys like me, when I hear you say 50,000 bushel bin and there's 2K, that's a 2.5 semis full of beans that, right? I mean, like, to me, those are real dollars. And I guess the other thing too, and I forgot to mention it, or I forgot to kind of highlight that, because you talked about an on-site bin assessment. Is there a cost to the grower to be able to get that assessment? Obviously, it's I'll call it's somewhat of a sales tool, but I love what you talked about in terms of education, because as a producer, if 85% of the market probably doesn't have some sort of technology, they need to know what it is, right? And I think that stuff like this that we're doing right now is helpful, but step 2 is getting out. Let's do an assessment, right? Is there a charge?
No, there's no charge for the on-site assessment. And that's why I say I wish every grower would just ask for that, or, whether they're talking with our sales reps themselves, myself, or even one of our dealers, I encourage them to say, hey, can someone come run an on-site assessment for me, the AGI on-site assessment? Because again, is it part of the sales process? Absolutely it is. But we want to make that an educational event, because at the end of the day, I know you're no different than I am. Nothing ticks me off more than if I go and buy something and it's not performing to the way I think it should or envisioned in my head. If we go through that on-site assessment and do the educational piece of it, there should be no doubt in a grower's mind that they made a good purchase on this. Now, outside from that point forward, again, rehydrating soybeans, well, a lot of that depends on weather. But again, through that process and doing the hydration or the aeration model, we're pulling in 10 years worth of NOAA weather data based off their zip code to be able to show them not only a 10-year average of how would this system performed on your farm, but it's breaking it down by every year in the last 10 years. And to me, that's powerful, because there's always years in the last 10 years where we can think back, okay, this year was dry, this year was wet. And then you can actually dial in on that and say, oh, that's how the system would have performed that year. That's how it would have performed. I mean, for me up in South Dakota in 2019, and where we farm in central South Dakota, being overly wet is usually not a concern. And 2019 was one of those years. So it's fun for me when I was running the hydration model for my bin, to be able to look at 2019 like, that's what I could have done, whether it was corn or beans in the bin. That's what could have happened. So,
Well, and I'll listen, nobody wants, again, I think it's an aha moment. Sometimes it's a hard one to swallow, right? Like, I've been doing it wrong for how long? Nobody's saying you're doing it wrong, but I think there's opportunity, right? One of my good friends had mentioned something to me about, Chad, and this is really, it's been a couple of years ago, they had mentioned, all the easy 5 to 7 bushel gains are gone, right? Yeah. All the easy ones. Now you have to do a little work to get those 5 to 7, to get those, right? Those easy big bushels are gone. And so these little ones now, they make every difference in the world in our commodity-based marketing, right? When we talk about every penny counting, it does, especially in markets like we have this season.
Oh, exactly. And again, this isn't a poke at seed companies, chem companies, whoever, but I mean, we're in the agronomy business as well. It's like the running joke is, well, if I buy all these different products, I'm going to have 400 bushel corn because every one of them has 2 to 5 bushel, right?
Right.
Point being, you're doing all that stuff to make as many gains as you can on the yield side. Why give away bushels when it's in the bin? Because I don't want to say we're not conditioning it properly, but we're not utilizing the technology to allow us to become more efficient in conditioning that grain. Because again, if we're only running the fans when they need to be running or when the air conditions are right, you are saving bushels that are in that bin, whether you're adding moisture to the beans or you're minimizing the over-dried corn or grain that you're putting in there as well. So,
Ryan, you do such a good job of kind of stating that, right? We work so hard to get it to where it is, right? And now, letting that slip through your fingers is a tough situation. I like where you guys are at. Mindset-wise, from a business standpoint, I love working with you and Joel. You guys got some really cool stuff. From a Total Acre standpoint, it's fun, right, to have partners like AGI. We get a chance to do this within our group to be able to educate our members. This is cool. Thanks for making the time to be able to actually educate other folks that are out there maybe interested in looking at Total Acre or trying to figure out, hey, what is AGI all about? How do you make it easy on my operation? So if there is, Ryan, right, and I know you've talked about the on-site bid assessment and, the optionality on, the different features, benefits, all the cool stuff that's out there. But if there's one thing that folks you want them to remember about what we talked about today, what would it be?
I think it comes back to the on-site assessment. Again, it's something that's free and it's not a sales tool. It's a educational tool. So again, we do that for free. We want to help growers know where they're at on the farm with their storage capabilities and help them understand how they can better maximize that investment they've already made. Now, if an additional investment of a bin manager helps drive some ROI and profitability back to the operation, well, that's great for both of us at the end of the day. So that's my big takeaway is it's there, utilize it. Learn more about what your bins can actually do or what they're capable of and see if something like this makes sense for them. That's the biggest thing. And
Ryan, that is again, that one thing, if you can remember that on-site bid assessment, well, then how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah.
The most important part, right?
Yeah. Should be able to get my contact information out to everybody, but my phone number is 605-310-2399 or email me at ryan.thompson@aggrowth.com. And like I say, we're all busy, but we'll get in touch with you as soon as we can and learn a little bit more about you, your operation, your bins, and get an on-site assessment scheduled.
Ryan, you said a lot and you've said it all. Listen, when it comes to bin management, bin manager specifically, the tools in the toolkit, you got to have them all to be able to figure out how we can operationalize and maximize efficiency within our operation. It's not enough just to bake bushels. We got to be able to actually mark those bushels at the end of the day. Yeah. Ryan, thanks a lot for your time today. I really appreciate it. We'll, sounds like we're going to see each other in a couple of weeks. It was great seeing you today, bud.
Yep. Appreciate it. As always glad to get together with you and the group here and look forward to talking to you soon. So.
I love it. Thanks, Ryan. Have a good week.
Yeah, you too. You as well.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in today to this episode of the Total Acre Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed it, you like the conversation, be sure to subscribe. You know the drill. Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Go give us a click, give us a like. Until next time, though, keep pushing forward. We hope that you found something unique, something powerful here that might help you unlock your farm's potential. We look forward to seeing you next week. Be safe. Talk more here soon on the next Total Acre Podcast.